Welcome, everybody. Hey, first of all, this is Chad McDaniel. I'm president of Execs in the Know. And I just want to welcome you. I know how busy everyone is, and just having some of your time today means so much. So thank you. Hope you've had a great summer. It's kind of get end of August here. Kids are back in school. Some may start after September, but anyhow, I hope everyone's doing well, had a great summer, and I'm excited for the conversation that we're going to have today. And I've got some special guests, and I'll introduce Melissa and Chris here shortly. But I wanted to go through a couple of things as we open up today's conversation. Decoding AI for CX. The word decoding means a lot. And me today was, I've asked Melissa and Chris to help us in kind of how we're transforming, how we're demystifying, how we're cutting through the noise. And that's really what I hope to get through today, because there is so much noise out there, as we all know. So I'm excited for today's conversation. I'm going to ask that we get as much audience participation as possible. Chris and Melissa have worked hard to put together kind of a thought track for us here today, and I'm excited to hear what they're going to share and many case studies they're bringing. But we're going to do a Q&A at the end. And again, I appreciate everyone's time. So please get your questions in the Q&A box there. We're definitely want to work together as a community, learn together as a community. So your questions are very important to me. If you're new to Execs of the Know, welcome. You're not alone. It's a corporate CX sharing community. I call it kind of like a conference executive board for the CX leader, a playbook for the CX leader. We do all sorts of things over the last 15 years for your success. You are my customer. I love to see the energy, the enthusiasm you have for customer number one. So keep up the great job. There's a lot we do with content research, topic-based meetings, in-person summits, dinners, all sorts of things. And I'm excited to hopefully see you in person, if not this year, next year at one of our in-person gatherings. But if you're new, go to execsknow.com. I'd go to the content page or the event page, and there's lots of information there for you to access. Fantastic board. Love these guys. They're customer first. They're customer obsessed. They really want to make a difference in our industry as leaders learning through leaders. So a big shout out to our corporate advisory board, just everything they do for our industry, for our community here at Execs in the Know. Hey, it's not too late. Get to Palm Springs. We're going to be there September 24th, 26th. It's our in-person summit. It's a 2.5-day amazing powwow, so to speak. We do all sorts of great lean-in topics. If you can join us, feel free to reach out to me, chat@execsknow.com, or go to our website. We have some amazing speakers and content being planned. We only host this twice a year, so we'd love to see you out. If you can get to the summit next month, do take a look at the agenda on our site at execsintheknow.com. And then finally, for those that may not be able to get to Palm Springs, for our corporate attendees, we do have like a mini LinkedIn on steroids, I call it, the online community 24/7. We have thousands of people with profiles set up. You can reach out to them directly. There's lots of conversations going on, ideas, best practice sharing. It really is a high-end connected community. So don't miss out on some of the insights and conversations that are taking place. All right. Well, Chris and Melissa, thank you enough about me and Execs in the Know and everything that we've been doing over here. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for coming out today. Thank you for working with us. Why don't we start out with just, I always love our audience. Let's start out with some quick introductions. Melissa, we'll go ladies first. Tell us a bit about your role, and then a little bit about Gladly, and then Chris will move quickly to you.
Certainly, yeah. So hi, everyone. Glad to be here. My name is Melissa McAllister. I'm a regional customer success manager at Gladly. I've been with Gladly for about 3 years, but have been in the industry that serves CX for, gosh, more than 10 years now. I've worked with many of the folks that I saw on your advisory board at Execs in the Know, and probably at least 100 customer care leaders over the course of my career at top brands that are known for amazing customer service. So really thrilled to be a part of the conversation today. And thank you for having us, Chad.
Awesome. Melissa, where's home for you? I'm in Phoenix. Where are you?
I'm in Jersey City, New Jersey, so just outside of Manhattan.
Ooh, okay, East Coasters. We've got an East Coaster on the panel today, so got you represented. Chris, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, Chris Van Wagner. I'm Director of Customer Lifecycle and Community at Gladly. I've spent more than a decade in e-commerce, working for eBay. Spent time in tech with ad tech companies and logistics. And I'm really excited to talk about the topic today because all of the industries that I've operated in have encountered major transformation over the course of kind of the emergence of online interactions and transactions. And so we're going through another transformation right now with AI. So couldn't be happier to spend some time with you today and talk about some of the good things that Chad's mentioned.
Well, thank you both. And what I'd like to do for our audience before we even get in, and I know there's a lot of community members that use Gladly, and this is not meant to be a commercial quickly, but just from point of reference for those that may not be familiar 100% Gladly, what are you guys really good at doing? I've heard a lot of good things within the community, but just for reference, what do you guys do and do really well? And then we'll talk into the leadership piece of this.
Yeah, I'd have to say that we were pioneers in bringing to market a conversational customer support, channel agnostic, really makes use of all of the different interactions that our customer support teams engage their customers with, and unifies it in such a way that as a customer support team is engaging with customers, they're engaging with almost like a text message that captures transactional information, that captures maybe challenges that the customer has had in using the product or the platform. And it designs it in such a way that it makes it much easier for customer support teams to build a strong relationship and really kind of create the loyalty that we're all looking for from a CX perspective.
You're being way too kind and underselling. It's an amazing product. So keep doing the great job you guys do out there. Let's lean in. Let's get started. I'm going to come off camera, let you guys, let's get into some great ideas, case study. And we got some bright people on this call here. So please share your questions, put your comments in the Q&A box, and we'll go from there.
Wonderful. Looking forward to it. Maybe as we get started, we're, as Chad mentions, diving into a familiar but very timely topic, and we're hoping that by the end of the conversation, that you should have access to some differentiation between what AI buzzwords are, what actual solutions are, practical steps for building CX AI strategy, and identifying some of those slippery slopes that we need to steer clear of. And then, as Chad mentions, we're going to share a few examples of how Gladly customers have taken advantage of our AI platform to really engage customers in a very meaningful way. So with that said, AI, the buzzword. AI has become a buzzword in almost every industry. It's taken on a slightly different shape in CX, given the saturation of products that exist and brands that have looked to really differentiate their products with flower over maybe facts. But I love in some of the websites that I've visited the multi-line product descriptions that I think that we're all starting to see. The only Shopify-powered, revenue-focused, green certified, pre-transactional AI support agent, or even the KPI promises. We're seeing 99% of tickets resolved with 100% CSAT. And so I think as I'm starting to interact with these different websites, these different platforms, I'm seeing more and more asterisks on these websites that I visit. And that's not to say that success stories don't exist, but I think that there are plenty of cautionary tales where AI didn't quite hit the mark. We remember the chatbot that couldn't handle complex customer queries, or the automated service that frustrated more than it helped. And these failures really remind us that while AI is powerful and it's promising, its application needs to be thoughtful. It needs to be strategic. There was a BCG statistic that came out not long ago that articulated that 85% of executives said that they were planning to invest in generative AI. And then these executives went on to clarify that the technology faced a wide array of stumbling blocks given various structures within their companies. So maybe as a starting point, Mel, Given some of the mishaps that have been in the news, what's kind of your favorite example of an AI failed story, and what can we learn from it?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. It's a great question. I think we all have seen the AI fails and have maybe experienced some of them ourselves. One that stands out to me, it actually dates back to, I think, 2016, was when Microsoft was one of the first companies to bring a chatbot to Twitter, right? And this bot was named Tay. It was on Twitter, it was interacting with users, and they deployed it to a production environment so users could actually have conversations with the bot. And what happened is that the bot started to mirror the interactions it was receiving from customers. And unfortunately, you had customers that were putting content out there that was really inappropriate. And so Tay learned how to reciprocate that inappropriate behavior. And there were quite a few embarrassing and inappropriate tweets that got sent. So that again was back in 2016. It was still early days of AI, but I think the lesson here is if you're going to be deploying this technology, especially in a way that's in front of your customers, you've got to have robust testing in place, and you've got to consider what the real world environment it's going to exist in is.
Yeah, I love that, the real world environment, and that's one of the things that we're going to get into a little bit later. But some of the demonstrations that we've been exposed to have been so controlled that they don't account for the way that people speak sometimes, or the types of words that they typically use. So, with some of these AI challenges that we've been exposed to, why would you say that maybe AI remains the buzzword that it is?
Yeah, this is not going to be a surprise to anyone in the audience today, but when I'm talking with CX leaders, our customers, there's really always two things that they're hyper focused on. The first is how do I become more efficient, right? How do I do more with less? I'm not meeting with any CX leaders who say, oh gosh, my CEO just gave me an unlimited budget and told me to do whatever I want with it. There's always this challenge of how do I become more efficient? But I've got to do that at the same time as I'm making the customer experience better. So it's a tough job, right? We're measuring CSAT, we're measuring NPS, we're constantly trying to raise the bar for our customers while making our businesses more efficient and operating with financial responsibility. So when I think about how AI plays into that equation, it makes a ton of sense to me that folks are really excited about the applications of AI. It has this outsized potential to have a huge impact on both of those areas. But there's also that challenge of how do we look at what the actual genuine potential is amidst all of the kind of noise and stats and overblown promises that you mentioned earlier, Chris.
Yeah, I love that, and I love that you mentioned, we're all looking to do more with less. But I think that kind of leads us to the next topic that we'd like to explore, and it's avoiding reckless AI adoption. We don't want to do more with less and then have to do it again. So I'd love to kind of chat about some of the hallmarks of kind of reckless AI that maybe we need to steer clear of. And with some of those horror stories that we've talked about, I'd be curious, based on some of the Gladly customers that you're interacting with, how are they feeling about the early days of AI and CX?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there certainly is that fear and hesitation, and I sort of think about it, and I've heard about it from customers in almost two waves, right? The first wave was maybe a year or two ago when everybody started learning what ChatGPT was, and there was a huge amount of pressure that came from executives, and I would say that's still there with CEOs and CFOs going to their teams and saying, "You've got to be doing something with AI. What are we doing? What's our AI strategy?" And I think a lot of well-meaning leaders kind of jumped on it and implemented some technologies. And I saw a lot of this with digitally native brands, some of our smaller to mid-sized, really agile customers, where they immediately jumped on some kind of AI technology, deployed it, and then unfortunately, in some cases, kind of fell flat on their faces and learned like, oh, this doesn't work quite the way that I thought it did, peeled back and decided to reassess. And I think the moment we're in now is what I would refer to as sort of the second wave of AI technology, where it is not just those quick movers, those really innovative brands. It is now everyone. The largest brands I work with are forming AI strategies right now and adopting AI technologies. And we're in this moment where folks are just being much more thoughtful about it, much more strategic about it, and thinking through where does AI actually make sense for my brand and the relationship I want to have with my customer what are the ethical considerations we need to be mindful of? What are the security and compliance considerations that we need to be mindful of? So it's just a much more thoughtful and planful and strategic moment than I think we were seeing 6 months to a year ago.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I'm actually reminded of the early days at eBay, and I was there in the early 2000s, which, dates me clearly. But we actually had 10% of buyers that were mailing payments to merchants. We even had merchants that were selling printed catalogs, and they were requiring the end user to cut out the item that they were looking to buy, put it in an envelope with some money, and then in 4 to 6 weeks that they'd receive their product. And in those early days of .com, you had this environment where people were very excited about these new technologies and what it actually meant for retailers. But I think that those brands that failed to put customers at the center and think deeply about this experience that they were asking these customers to engage, the folks that didn't prioritize that kind of fell into the unknown, where businesses that did evolve with these technologies became prominent fixtures within the e-commerce experience. So when we take a look at some of those downward pressures that you talk about, what are some realistic expectations that executives should have about AI to kind of avoid falling into some of these common innovation pitfalls?
I love this question, and this is probably my favorite question, Chris, because I think this is so important for people that are in our audience today. I think I've heard this phrase mentioned often: success is results minus expectations. And so, a big part of having a successful AI strategy and deployment comes down to actually setting those expectations in the first place and knowing what is realistic. And so, I would sort of break this down into a few different areas. Perhaps most importantly, AI is not a cure all. I know we wish it was, and maybe it will be someday, but right now, if you're deploying AI, especially in a customer facing capacity, you've really got to be prepared for the fact that it takes a significant investment in training. You're going to have to build some integrations or set up some integrations in order to really make it able to handle the bulk of your queries. And you're going to need to monitor data quality, right? It's going to get it wrong sometimes, and you need to have humans in control to help the AI really be able to solve for more business cases. There's also this component of AI is not going to completely replace your human experts overnight, nor do you want it to, nor should you want it to, because I think the way to view AI, at least in this moment in time, is as a complement to human expertise rather than a complete replacement for it. The other thing I would mention, and I run into this a lot with companies that are new to adopting AI, is they think they're going to flip a switch and like the results are just going to happen overnight. And that is just not realistic. I think folks need to think about this through the lens of this is going to be a gradual process. And I would actually recommend for folks that are just starting to deploy AI, make it iterative. Pick a small area, one type of inquiry, one channel, one subset of your customers, one brand, where you can deploy this in a thoughtful way. Really be intentional about what you're putting in front of customers, look at the results, and then iterate, right? Don't just unleash it to all of your customers overnight and expect that it's going to work well. That's just not realistic. One of our customers, Danny at Breeze Airways, refers to this as AI is sort of like a puppy. And he said, the puppy's going to pee on the carpet sometimes when you first get it. And that's okay. But you have to be willing to invest the time to train and get it right in order to get the results that you expect on a consistent basis. And the last thing that I'll mention here, and this I think gets to the crux of what we're trying to impart upon folks today, is there are a lot of numbers being thrown out in our space, right? There are a lot of vendors making promises. And I would encourage everyone to really think about those potential results, those numbers, through the lens of your brand specifically. And so, what I mean when I say that is if you are a brand that sells a very transactional product and most of the inquiries you get today are, where is my order? How do I get a refund? What's your return policy? Maybe 90% resolution via AI is attainable for you. Maybe that's a realistic thing to expect because those are repetitive questions that AI can handle really well. If instead you have a really high touch process that usually even takes your human agents multiple touches to achieve resolution of a particular issue, it is not realistic to expect that AI is going to be able to take on and resolve 90% of that. So you really have to think about, what are my customers reaching out to me about? What of that can realistically be put into an AI centered process? And what of it do I even want to give to AI when you're thinking about those numbers that you should realistically expect? And that's not always obvious. So I think that that's something I hope folks can take away today.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts on that. I mean, I think that really kind of reaffirms the need to almost develop an allergy to the asterisks, right? And I think of my daughter and how I'm teaching her about how, gosh, if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. McKinsey a while back made an estimate that at the time I think that AI was being implemented across 15% of companies, and they estimated that by the end of 2025 it was going to increase to something like 40%. And to see some of these claims that are being made about, again, close to 100% resolution rate with 100% CSAT, that we have to practice that discernment that you talk about. It's critically
Mhm.
important as we're evaluating these different solutions. Well, this leads us
Absolutely.
to kind of the next area of conversation, and I think that this kind of gets to the crux of ultimately what we care most about as CX practitioners, and that's maintaining customer loyalty in the face of the AI era. It wasn't long ago that the BMW declared I think they referred to them as the 7 principles for AI, and it was really a code of ethics that would deliver innovation with a focus on human agency and oversight. And the VP of Technology Research and Innovation over at BMW, Peter Leinart, stated that artificial intelligence is an important part of the digital transformation. It's a pioneer, and its goal ultimately is to inspire intelligent customer experiences. And I think sometimes we get caught up in the I in AI being kind of this intelligence, it being intelligent, but how do we practice our own intelligence in applying these technologies and ensuring that they drive the right customer experiences? And we've also heard from Gladly customers like Rothy's and Allbirds, really making commitments around the best of human and AI interactions. From the Execs in the Know Artificial Intelligence for CX report that recently launched, I remember seeing a statistic that said 51% of consumers are undecided about AI's future, and 14% actually find it scary. So it really maintains the importance of careful AI implementation and really customer-centric values to kind of engaging with these technologies, ensuring that loyalty is ultimately what you're looking to drive. Cisco also had a survey that they sent out, and again, this kind of reaffirms this concept. But 60% of consumers say that they've lost trust in providers where AI is being overused. So it's really this important message that yes, it's important to find ways to streamline experiences that we're providing our customers, but we do need to practice caution as we're engaging with these technologies. So as we kind of peel back the onion, Mel, and think
Mhm.
about some of these key factors, what are your customers saying about things that they're prioritizing to really maintain that customer loyalty?
At the end of the day, it's about trust, right? And it's about an emotional connection. And it might not be fair, but it's pretty easy to lose that trust, and it's pretty easy to lose that emotional connection. And I think that's part of what's scary to folks about AI. If, the bot makes a mistake, or we give a customer the wrong information, or we have sort of an embarrassing mess up, are we going to burn that bridge? Are we going to hurt the trust that we've worked so hard to build up with that customer? And I think that's where some of these ideas around being really discerning and really thoughtful about the way we implement is so important, right? Because that's critical to protecting that loyalty.
Yeah, I agree. And kind of that human-centered sentiment, I think extends as well, not just to customers, but also to our customer support teams. I mean, we've seen a lot of success recently, just as our customers have implemented AI, where they've actually prioritized bringing their customer support teams along for the AI journey and really helping them understand AI application, how AI is going to complement their day to day and really unlock new opportunities for the team. One other statistic that I love to highlight actually comes from Gladly's Hero Experience Report, where we interviewed hundreds and hundreds of customer support teams and customer support agents. We like to call them heroes at Gladly. And one of the things that really came to the surface was that 52% of customer service agents looking for growth opportunities were looking to the teams that they work for to kind of provide those growth opportunities. And 89% were actually looking to stay in customer support, like they're committed to building relationships. And I think it's critically important as we bring folks along on the AI journey that we're also looking for new and interesting ways to take advantage of those insights that our customer support teams have, so that we can really proliferate the voice of the customer throughout the business and make sure that minimum viability for our products are actually dependent on the voice of the customer and the things that they're actively experiencing. So Mel, maybe along those same lines, we've talked about fear and uncertainty in consumers, but how should we think about kind of the fear and uncertainty that may exist among our customer support teams?
Yes, I have so much empathy for this idea because it's a scary time to be a CX agent and it's a hard job already. And I think I do hear from leaders all the time that have a lot of unease and unrest on their teams where agents are worried that AI is going to swoop in and take their jobs. And it's not an unfounded concern. I think there are some companies about there that are thinking about it that way. But what gives me hope and what I find really inspiring, and I imagine for the leaders in this room, they're the folks that really care about elevating the customer experience. So this might resonate with them, is this idea that AI can actually be the raising tide that raises all ships, right? And so when we think about how leaders can be communicating with their frontline teams about how this might change their workflows, your agents are going to be your best source of data in terms of how you can implement AI, in terms of where you can find efficiency. So I think treating them like this amazing source of insight and data that they are is paramount in this moment. I think the other thing I think a lot about is AI has this tremendous capacity to transform the job of an agent. If AI can take on all of the really redundant, repetitive questions and let the agent genuinely form that connection with a human and have a conversation that requires their expertise and their insight, how much better does their quality of life and their job satisfaction get? And how much does that potentially allow them to elevate their career in CX, which, like you said, is what people working in this industry want to do. They get into CX and they work these jobs because they want to help people. And so I think we're in this moment where when I'm having conversations, and we had some of these conversations at Gladly Connect Live earlier this year, where CX leaders are talking about how they can enable their teams to take that next step in their career. Can they reallocate some agents towards making outbound calls to proactively do clienteling or have these surprise and delight moments? For as long as I have been in CX, leaders have talked about how do we transform from being this reactive center of service to a proactive center of service? And I think AI actually gets us to a place where we can start to really see that happen. And so I think having these types of conversations with your front line is so important because they're definitely talking about it. So if, as leaders, we're not getting out ahead of it and telling them how we see this impacting their career and how we're developing plans for them to grow and be an important part of the company's future, we're missing an opportunity there.
We've even heard some of our customers talk about how they're leveraging AI time and cost savings to creating dedicated internal resources. Oftentimes the customer support teams know the product better than anybody, and so
Most of the time, yes.
right, and so developing videos that really articulate the value that exists with the product and how customers can take advantage of it. It's a resource that I don't know that we've fully explored yet, but I think that there's just so much opportunity in exploring it. Well, I love this topic. Maybe we continue to click into some of these different things. I'd love to maybe explore again some of the customer centric considerations that need to be made, and how do we bundle all of these different concepts that we're talking about to ensure that that the implementation is as smooth as possible. We've spoken to a lot of CX leaders and AI vendors even through the Gladly Connect community. And there are 4 questions that regularly come up as a part of AI evaluation. Have you agreed on a primary motivation for implementing CX AI? This comes down to, is the primary motivation reducing cost of scale, or is it to optimize customer experience? And I think that that's something that teams need to be very clear around. One of the second things that we hear quite often is around the systems that are in place. Do you have the systems in place, and specifically the customer satisfaction systems in place to evaluate the changes that you're making and whether or not they align with customer centricity? Third question that we hear quite often is actually around help and education resources. Do you have help and education resources to support implementation and maintenance? I think we're going to get into that a little bit more around making sure that your knowledge base is in order and that you have the right data signals to understand what's happening. And then lastly, does the AI solution interface with your order management system? And it isn't always the case. All AI solutions aren't created equal. And I think that there are valuable touch points as part of our interactions with customers that can actually be automated in a very powerful, very meaningful way by these AI solutions. So really, at the heart of these questions that we hear within our community, there's this active awareness of people and systems. So maybe to kind of validate some of these community insights, those brands that you interact with on a regular basis, how are they ensuring that the AI strategy that they're implementing addresses important considerations like the ones I listed?
Absolutely. And I think this is where we start to get into some of the brass tacks and sort of actionable insights that I think members of our audience can really use. And so I think one I have seen deployed really successfully is the idea, and I touched on this earlier, of involving stakeholders from all levels, including those frontline employees, those customer service agents. We call them heroes here at Gladly. I would recommend actually asking them for input before you even start implementing different AI flows. So, for example, what's something that our customers should be able to do themselves today but can't? And I'm sure if you ask that to a frontline agent on your team, they will have 5 or 6 different answers for you, right? And it'll require technology to actually make that happen. Some of that might be AI oriented, some of that might even be website changes, but being able to get that insight from those humans on what's something our customers should be able to do for themselves but can't do is gold. Another one would be something like, what's a question you get asked 10 times a day that you would love to never have to answer again? Those types of questions are ripe for AI and is something AI can handle really, really well. I also think leaders need to be mindful of mapping out, what job do you want AI to have? What job do you want agents to have? And how will they operate alongside each other? So there could be examples of customer journeys where it starts with AI and then gets handed off to an agent. There might be journeys like, for example, a customer receives a damaged product where you say, I never want that to go to AI. I always want my agents to handle that because that's a really important experience. And so I think being really thoughtful about what those types of journeys are that your customers commonly have and where you would want that to play out over the spectrum of machine versus human is a really good starting point. One of my favorite examples I've heard here comes from our customer Rothy's. If folks in the audience know Lauren, they implemented Gladly's Sidekick, that's our AI solution, and they actually gave their AI bot a name. They named her Sandy. And they think about Sandy like a regular member of their team. And they have a CSAT score for Sandy, and all of their human agents can see how Sandy's doing that day. And one of my favorite things that they do is they actually let Sandy be the bad guy. So if a customer reaches out about a final sale item, for example, Sandy will respond to that customer and say, oh, so sorry, that's outside the final sale window. That kind of news is sometimes tough for human agents to give, right? We all are humans, we have empathy, we want to make exceptions. AI is really good at being the bad guy and enforcing policies consistently. Then if that customer pushes back on Sandy and says, you know what, I really need to return these shoes for whatever reason, that's where they bring in the human and they let the human agent be the hero and make the exception and really make that customer's day, foster that loyalty, build that emotional connection. And so I think this is such a great example of putting AI in a lane that AI is really, really good at, and that actually makes your human agents' lives better. Um, Another one I've heard is we have customers at Best Choice Products. For those who are unfamiliar with them, they sell their products primarily on marketplaces like Amazon. And so a lot of the inquiries that come into them are coming in via email. A lot of them are your generic, like, I'm looking for a tracking update, I need information on how to do a return. And they've deployed AI to be sort of an information gatherer. So in cases where a customer doesn't provide all the information that you might need to fully resolve their issue, can AI take that first pass and get more information from them about what it is that they need, so that by the time a human actually comes in, they can really be helpful. They can be positioned to be really successful. And through doing that, they've been able to fully resolve about 10% of email inquiries, but perhaps even more impressively, they've been able to reduce the handle time required from their human agents by about a third. And so these are the types of examples that I love thinking about. It takes into consideration, where do we let humans do their best work and where do we let the AI handle the stuff that the AI should be able to handle?
Yeah, I love that. And it's really, how do you use AI to unlock some of the core principles of your brand? One of the stories that I know you and I both love is a story that we hear from Joey, the founder at Allbirds. And as he's talked about how he's used the Gladly platform, one of the stories that he shares is around a return. And the email that the customer support team received basically articulated that the customer's dog chewed up their shoes, and they were requesting a new pair that wasn't chewed. And as Joey talks about that, this was a story that went viral. And the reason that it went viral was because not only did Allbirds, from a policy perspective, make the decision to just replace the pair of shoes, the customer support team responded with a message that said, your new pair of shoes are in the mail. P.S. Please don't hurt your dog. And that sort of humanity that represents Allbirds and their brand was something that was unlocked through technology. And so I think that there are going to be more of those opportunities as we take a closer look at what we stand for as a brand and how we can amplify that through these AI technologies that we're talking about. Well, let's talk a little bit about data, because we're both big believers in data. And I think that data absolutely needs to be used as part of an AI consideration. But I'd love to get your perspective as to, what considerations should be made around the data that CX practitioners have access to.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would sort of think about this as a series of phases, if you will. And so, depending on where you're at in your AI journey, the way that you're going to use data and the way that it can be most helpful for you is going to differ. So, if you are just getting started, right, you're starting to introduce AI into your CX systems and processes, you're not quite sure where you want to start. There is a ton that AI can do to actually help you get the data you need to implement more AI. And so I have a lot of customers who are using AI to help them do text analytics to understand what customer sentiment looks like on specific types of issues. So when customers reach out to us about order tracking, they're really happy. When customers reach out to us about returns, they're really upset. How long do those different types of inquiries take? So you can use AI to help you parse the data to figure out where you can use AI to make customer journeys operate better. And our customer I mentioned earlier at BSN Sports, they do this really well. They layer AI on top of conversation transcripts to help them understand where there's a correlation between contact reasons and sentiment, and then create process improvements to reduce any customer friction. The other pieces of that is understanding where that friction does occur, right? Are there particular types of topics or inquiries that customers have where it takes a really long time or a lot of different touches to resolve that type of issue. And how can we look at AI as a way to reduce the complexity in that process? And then once you've actually started implementing, data starts to play a slightly different role. This becomes more of a measure and consistent improvement piece of the pie. And so that's where I would look at things like CSAT, customer effort scores, if you're managing to track that, handle time, FCR, to see if where you've implemented AI, it's actually having the desired effect, or if there's additional iteration that you might need to do to optimize that for your customers.
Yeah, amazing. I just, more and more, I think as people are beginning to map customer journeys and have a clear understanding of behaviors and motivations that their customers are expressing, that they're paying closer attention to some of these different signals. And I absolutely believe wholeheartedly in data as being a core consideration for the way that we're implementing these solutions. Because again, you can start to evaluate some of these early signals that data is providing us to understand, is this having a positive or a negative impact on the customer experience based on how it's currently configured? And how do we make tweaks to really deliver the experience that our customers are actively looking for?
Absolutely.
Well, that brings us to our last slide. If folks remember, we started out with AI, the buzzword. We're going to finish with AI, the buzzer beater. So I'm based in Utah, and I'm a big basketball fan. And I grew up watching Karl Malone and John Stockton for the Utah Jazz, and we were deathly afraid of when the Chicago Bulls came to town. The team was so strong that they probably could have gotten close to beating us just with everybody else they had on their roster. But then there was this guy named Michael Jordan, and you could always expect him to just take the team just a little bit further to win the game and to win the championship. And so as we think about AI, I actually like to think of it as that player on the team, that after all the hard work that your brand, your product, your frontline customer support teams have done to build relationships, AI can be that component that gets the experience over the line and meets customer expectations in a new and interesting way, really delivering that last mile of the transaction and ensuring that that customers come back for more. So in order to make sure that you have the right AI solution, you need a partner that not only has an understanding of what customer experience has looked like historically, but what the future of customer experience looks like, so that when it comes down to it and you're watching the clock, you can be confident in that solution, that it's going to deliver, that it's going to make that game-winning shot. So Mel, how do CX leaders go about identifying the right partner? They know their considerations, they know kind of the business objectives that they're looking to achieve. How do they go about finding that partner?
Ugh, I just want to say it's hard. And I know that it's hard because I hear it from our customers all the time. I had a customer the other day tell me that her record was getting 30 inbound emails and LinkedIn outreaches from AI vendors in 30 minutes. So I don't follow sports like you do, Chris, but I imagine that this is more like basketball little league than the chaos, and it's super hard to understand, who that right partner is going to be. So I do have a few recommendations. I think a there are a set of non-negotiables that you should make sure are present in any vendor that you're considering. And that comes down to things like scalability, reliability, privacy controls, security, compliance. Those things just have to be there. And if they aren't present with the vendor, it's a non-starter. So figure out what those non-negotiables are for you and then make sure you have those with any vendor that you're considering. Beyond that, if we assume like everyone can meet the non-negotiables, I think there becomes an element of vision here. And what I mean when I say that is there are so many different ways to apply AI. If your company's vision, and we talked about this earlier, is I really want AI to help me deflect a ton of contacts. I want less people to be able to talk to my agents and I want to deflect as much as possible. There are vendors out there that will promise you that and will do that and will do that really, really well. And that's all they'll do, right? There are other vendors who are better at blending that AI contact with a human contact and sort of interspersing that journey and putting AI in AI's lane and humans in humans lane and figuring out that blend alongside you. So if that is more your speed, I would look for a partner who has enumerated that as part of their vision. I also would recommend looking at companies for whom continuous improvement is a priority. Part of that is like how often are they doing releases? How quickly are they adapting to the different models and the different controls that are being made available? Is it sort of a set it and forget it where they haven't touched the product in a few years? If so, that's probably not going to fly at the pace that these technologies are changing. I think a big one that a lot of people get hung up on, and we sometimes get customers who come to Gladly after a failed implementation because they've gotten stuck on this, is ease of use. How easy is it to get started? And a big component of this, I think I saw a question come in the chat, is can you use stuff you already have? So, for example, if you have an answers knowledge base that you've invested a ton of time and resources into building out and making really, really good, can the vendor that you're considering partnering with make use of that? And how can they make use of that in their AI solution? Or are they requiring you to kind of start from scratch and create everything on your own without any guidance? So I think the technology could be perfect, but if you cannot realistically make use of it with the resources that you have, and it requires umpteen years of engineering effort, and I know all of our CX friends are resource constrained on the engineering side because I've been in this industry for a long time, then that is not a good partner for you. So I think that ease of use is a really important consideration that people don't always put as many eggs in that basket as they should. I think those are probably the biggest ones. The last I would say is in terms of red flags to avoid if you're looking at a partner who's not willing to share data with you or not willing to give you access to data so you can see how things are going on an ongoing basis, that's something I would be leery of. I've heard that from some folks in the industry. So I would just make sure that you feel like you have a lot of visibility into how does the AI actually work and how do I measure over time that it is actually working the way that I expect it to.
Yeah, I like the concept of red flags. Maybe we spend a little bit more time talking about some of these red flags that some of your customers have observed. So again, thinking about that sports analogy, making that winning shot, what does it require in terms of like those red flags? What should a CX practitioner look for to avoid the red flags that indicate that maybe an AI solution just isn't going to be able to deliver on its promises?
Yeah, it's a good question. So like I said, if they can't explain to you how their technology works, they're not willing to give you access to data, that's a huge red flag. Another one is if they're wanting to demo it in their own environment, but there's no real world examples you can look at. We talked about that Microsoft example where it worked really, really great in a test environment and then it got out in the wild and went kind of crazy. So I would look for providers that are willing to let you see their technology on another website and actually see what it looks like when it's really in production. And then just, are there real world case studies or testimonials or references they can give you for how their AI has done the thing you want it to do with other companies similar to yours, right? That should go without saying, but it doesn't always. So I think just do your due diligence and make sure you're really kind of peeling back the curtain to see what's going on there.
Yeah, how important is an eye on the future for these providers? I'm reminded of Zappos not long ago. There was an interview that I read with CTO Nigel Story where he talked about how every stage of the customer journey can benefit from AI, and they're actually leveraging augmented reality in conjunction with AI to create a virtual try-on environment. And one of the things that he stated was that customers that use this virtual try-on experience return about 30% less of their products than customers that don't. So maybe just closing thoughts. What are some of the more futuristic technologies that your customers are looking forward to?
Absolutely. I'll give you a couple quick thoughts and then I'll pass it back to Chad because I'd actually love to hear questions and thoughts from our audience on this. I think When I think about what the future of AI can do for our industry, there's a ton of cool, shiny stuff like you're talking about, trying on things and virtual experiences and shopping in the metaverse. But what excites me the most, and I think what excites most of the CX executives I support are excited about, is just the ability for it to be, as I said earlier, that rising tide that raises all ships. Can this transform what it means to have a career in customer experience? Can this transform what it means to be a consumer who's interacting with customer experience so that I can get fast, friendly service from automation when that makes a ton of sense, but from a human when that human touch is really needed? So it's not as glamorous or sexy as some of the things you mentioned, but I think that is the most genuinely exciting thing for me.
Yeah, I love it. All right. And with that, I think we can take some questions.
Yeah, well, Chad's back, so I want to have a conversation. Melissa, Chris, thank you so much. I was taking just a ton of notes, and I appreciate how we kind of went through the categories. I was thinking of a couple of analogies, puppy peeing on the carpet with AI being the new training it. I was thinking a little bit about, boy, I need a Sandy bot from Rothy's in my life to be the bad guy, good guy, or whatever in between. But and I also want to say, can we make sure we at Execs Know get a copy of the Hero Report? I'd love to see that and see what we could pass out with in the community there. So, in one other comment, I'll say I really like the fact on the AI community partnering with the agents and really leveraging the workflows in the source of insight. I think we need to be doing a lot more of that and bringing them in as a knowledge source and data source.
Totally.
Let me ask you, I know there's some questions. Thank you, audience. I'm going to get to them real quick. I just want to ask a question to you. What % of brands today do you feel in our industry currently are truly customer facing generative AI application? They're doing it today. What % would you say?
It's pretty small. I would say maybe 15%. I think we're still early in the Gen AI piece, which is different than other types of AI that folks are using. I think Gen AI is still pretty new and not a ton of brands have figured it out yet.
Okay, I agree with you. I think 15% is probably being generous, maybe a little bit below that.
Yep.
You may have a different feeling. What is, and again, if we had this conversation 3 years, it would be very different. But what is the number? There's many things, but in your opinion, kind of the top stop gate that's preventing that number to be higher right now? What's the main issue?
I think fear. I think there are certainly like security and compliance controls in place. I work with a lot of companies who say, okay, we've spun up this whole security and compliance team and they have to review everything before we can do anything. And my contracts are getting stuck in AI jail. So there's that, but I'll put that to one side for a second because I think that exists with a lot of technology. I think people are nervous and they're not quite sure what it will do. And they're afraid of some of these horror stories we've heard about. And I think the answer to that, Chad, is being iterative. Like I would just encourage the audience, you don't have to put it on the front door of your website and open it up to every single customer. There are some lower risk ways where folks can try out certain types of AI experiences with controls in place that might help them get both themselves and their organizations more comfortable.
And maybe to amplify, I think the control piece, I hear from the community all the time that sometimes they default to rules-based AI just simply because they have more control over the environment. And so I think that's allowed for the more rules-based AI solutions that are out there to get some of the traction that they're looking for, because you have customers that aren't willing to jump in because of that fear of the unknown, the inability to control the environment, and what ultimately that means for loyalty and the cost associated with repairing relationships that go awry.
My last comment too, and I'm going to get to the questions. Thank you again for that, the fear and control. I'm going to really advocate to our customer leadership community that we have to get on board. There's no tomorrow, there's no today. I mean, it's now in the sense of, I think, the cost pressures, the efficiency plays, the things that are being mandated across the board throughout many different organizations right now. But we have to find paths and methods and trials that are going to work. And if it's through case study, through our partners like Gladly and getting where they're getting creative with their brands or through other brands and execs in the know, do not be left in the dust. I know right now we're getting educated, we're learning, we're experiencing, but I'm just going to say the train's left the station and we have to get there. That's a whole nother conversation we could have an
Yes.
angel powwow about, but I'm telling you, as doing this for a number of years, the time is now. Questions here. We can take them in any quick order here. Let me go with Michael. How do you decipher advancing technology versus true AI? Technology is constantly iterating and advancing, but what does it determines if it's classified as AI? Thank you, Michael.
Great question,
This is a
Michael.
rapid fire here. We're going to have to go quick.
Yeah, rapid fire. So I would say there's really two types of AI that we're seeing commonly in the marketplace today. One, Chris referred to, is what we would call rules-based AI. So it's very deterministic. If this, then that. Customer follows this very specific flow. What we're seeing more of now, and the piece you heard me alluding to with like the answers back and forth, is generative AI. And so both of those are AI, but it really, in terms of how you have to configure it and how specific you have to be and how it guides the customer through a flow, those are sort of the two flavors. But there's a lot more. We could have a whole session on that specific thing. So if you want to catch up more about that, Michael, I'm happy to.
And again, we can take these questions post-event and we can maybe put a little flavor to them if we need to and get them back to the individuals on there. Jeff, yes, the recording will be rebroadcast and for download and replay, so you can get a copy of that. Jeremy asked a quick question. Knowledge-based content was not created for the purpose of AI usage. What would you recommend is the best approach to updating your KB knowledge management, I guess, to work best with AI? Any quick thought there?
Great question, Jeremy. I don't know kind of what technology or solutions you're using. Here at Gladly, we have what we call public answers, which are the answers that actually exist in the help center on your website or in public facing content that a customer would normally have access to. And we can serve those up via the generative AI, and the generative AI can turn those into conversational replies given a set of guidelines. So that's sort of how we handle it. We also make APIs available to customers, and our AI can actually suggest answers for you where one doesn't exist based on how we see customers communicating. So I think there's a ton of different ways of going about that, but a lot of it will come down to what tools you're using and how you can make that available to your customers.
Yeah, I might add just really quickly, as structured as you can possibly be. I think if you've kind of allowed your help and support teams to just Wild West your knowledge base and write all sorts of different things in there, it's difficult for AI to kind of interpret what's being said. But the same way that we're all familiar with prompts today and how it can create pretty significant variations based on the types of language that we use and how the prompt is configured, we need to approach the knowledge base in the same way.
Yeah. And by the way, someone sent me a text, Chris, you have a radio voice, so I take that as a compliment.
It's true.
Let me just rapid fire quickly. How much, this is for Gladly in your product, I guess. How do you incorporate existing knowledge bases and contact flows into meaningful chat and email responses? So how do you, or I assume you do this, but at the end of the day, is there something you just want to say to that particular quick question?
Yes, exactly. So as I was mentioning previously, we do have a way within Gladly today to take all of that knowledge base that you've already created, all those what we call public answers, layer generative AI on top of those, so that if a customer is reaching out to you via chat, for example, they have a question for which the answer exists in your knowledge base, the generative AI can turn that into a conversational response and serve it right up to your customer in real time.
If I wanted to start small, how long would it take to incorporate a Gladly product or strategy into my CX journey? I know there's probably different layerings, but just from a rough guess, what does it take?
If you're an existing Gladly customer, we could set you up with that kind of answers back and forth within a week or two. If you're not an existing customer, there's a little more to it than that, but we've implemented customers as quickly as 8 weeks for an entire CRM solution.
Good benchmark. $1 million question. What AI framework have you found to be the best for the CX industry?
A great question. Chris, I think we have a takeaway for our guests that will start to get into that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's down in the resources section, but we do have an AI readiness kit
Yes.
that we've made available that starts to unpack some of those questions and help people understand the sorts of frameworks that they should use when implementing AI.
Thank you for the reminder. Audience, yes, absolutely. Get that AI readiness kit that is being placed out there. So take a look at that. And I think that'll be very helpful. Well, a lot of good compliments from the audience about just the quality of today's discussion. I just want to say thank you so much, Melissa and Chris. Our time goes so fast. I hope we can do this again and continue to have a debate, talk about this, but this conversation is going to stay forefront for the next X period of time. It's exciting times for where we sit right now as a customer leadership community. So thank you so much. On behalf of Execs in the Know, I know our time is out. Have a great rest of your day. You're never alone. Stay close. Love to see you guys at another gathering. Take well. Chris, Melissa, great job.
It was a pleasure.